The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
So winter for me always seems to last forever. I don't know if any of you are feeling that way. But I get tired of the snow, the cold, and the wonderful winter driving. Everything looks so drab and gray and lifeless. And my husband is one of the native people of this land, and they teach that winter is the season when the earth is growing and maturing. Underneath the layers of snow, the earth is preparing to give birth to new things. So today, I need a reminder to breathe. I don't know about the rest of you, but maybe let's breathe together. To look beyond that cold, drab scenery, and to remember that soon spring will return with its buds and blossoms. So I invite you to breathe with me and to hear these wise words from the Ute Indians. Earth, teach me quiet as the grasses are still with new light. Earth, teach me suffering as old stones suffer with memory. Earth, teach me humility as blossoms are humble with beginning. Earth, teach me caring as mothers nurture their young. Earth, teach me courage as the tree that stands alone. Earth, teach me limitation as the ant that crawls on the ground. Earth, teach me freedom as the eagle that soars in the sky. Earth, teach me acceptance as the leaves that die each fall. Earth, teach me renewal as the seed that rises in the spring. Earth, teach me to forget myself as melted snow forgets its life. And earth, teach me to remember kindness as dry fields weep with rain.
The chaplain for today is Jenny Eagleman, chaplain for Allina Health, St. Paul, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 88th Session, 2014, 66th day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Tuesday, March 4th, 2014.
There's no objection. Further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be corrected as approved by the chief clerk. Seeing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Representative Petersburg.
Point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for a moment of silence for one of our fallen soldiers from Minnesota here. Marine Lance Corporal Caleb Erickson was killed a week ago on Friday in a suicide bombing in Afghanistan. And our prayers and thoughts are with the family, and a great appreciation for the ultimate sacrifice that he gave for the freedoms of the United States. And so I renew my request for a moment of silence.
Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business has been placed on each member's desk. If there's no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House files.
Second reading House File 300.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 977.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1938.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2018.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2096.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2149.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2167.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2394.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2479.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2647.
Second reading.
And second reading of House File 2665.
Second reading. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The Chief Clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House Files 2720 through 2854.
First reading House files 2720 through 2854. Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration. Murphy E. for the Committee on Rules, pursuant to Rules 121 and 333, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for today for Thursday, March 6, 2014, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bill.
Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 629. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File 629, number 2 on the calendar for today, the first engrossment, an act relating to counties.
I call on the author, Representative Dill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The bill before you is a Senate file that came over from the Senate. We sent a bill over last year in 2013 that just applied to Lake County only, which is in the Arrowhead within my legislative district. The Senate sent back a bill that included Lake, Clay, Kandiyohi, Jackson, and Lyon counties. Representative Lenczewski, Representative Gunther, and my county that went over last year from the House file. This allows the county board, through a process of having public hearings, public notice, to appoint a clerk, auditor, and treasurer, or combine the positions. It also includes a option, or it also requires an 80% vote of the county board to get this process started, and it provides a reverse referendum for the voters who disagree with the county board's decision to bring that up to a general election vote on the next general election ballot as to whether or not the county board should appoint those positions. The members, the reason for the bill is, especially in the county that I represent here, in which is Lake County, it's a population of less than about 10,000 people. And because the county is so small, it's sometimes difficult to find qualified individuals that are willing to run for public office. There are qualified individuals. Generally, they are in the workforce at some place in the county doing this kind of work. But to get them to run for public office and then continue on to run for public office is difficult. It's difficult for them to receive the training. It's expensive for them to receive the training that is specific to meet the statutory requirements of operating a county with regard to accounting, statutory authority, and things of that nature. So these counties, along with 25 previously authorized counties, and members, the 25 counties that already have this latitude represent 79% of the population of the state of Minnesota. So this is a widely held opportunity of which we are adding 5 counties to. I'll stand for questions on the bill. There is also a way, one additional thing I'd like to point out, is there is a way for the county that decides to do this, of these 5 counties, to revert back to the original situation. So if they find that it didn't work for them, they can go back to an elected through a process that's specified here in the bill. Any questions? And Mr. Speaker, I know there's an amendment.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Quam moving to amend Senate File 629, the first engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded 817.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to build off the author's last comments about the county does have a way of moving back. And frankly, I have some sympathy towards the counties that are looking for a qualified person and, trying to do this and coming to us. But it's not trivial taking away from the citizens who had the right to vote an input on this position. So if the citizens agree that it should be appointed, but wish to have the option to have a voice to remove a person that the citizens feel is not responsible to them, but maybe is only responsible to the board or a portion of the board, my amendment would, I guess, create something new. That if you were a previously elected position and you're appointed, that the citizens would have the opportunity at the same periodicity that the position is elected to do a retention. If they thought you were doing good, they could vote yes, and you continue. But if they thought that you were not responsive to the citizens and not the right person, they could vote no and remove you. Now this doesn't prevent the board from appointing someone new. So allow citizens that agree with the board about needing to move it to appointive for all the reasons the board may have, but retains that accountability to the citizens for this position that was created to be elective. And so I ask for your support to retain a semblance of accountability to the citizens for these positions. Thank you.
Representative Dill.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Representative Quam, thank you for bringing forward the amendment. I'm going to object to the amendment and ask that the amendment be defeated. I hear, Representative Quam, in what you're saying is that you don't have a problem with the bill, except that you want to add this additional facet into the bill. I think that's what I heard you say. One of the reasons that I don't particularly like this, I'm not certain that there's anywhere else where it reads, may the county board retain blank name person appointed to a responsible function of county and the title. I'm not sure that any employed individual of a subdivision of the state of Minnesota, political subdivision, has their name on the ballot, but it could be corrected on that. I don't believe that exists anywhere. I remember, and with regard to the option of the citizens having a voice, in the county that I'm representing, and that is Lake County, I had a couple of folks that came to me and said that they weren't in favor of this in 2013. And I directed them back to the county board. I said, you need to go to your county commissioner, you need to talk to them and find out why they're trying to do this. And since then, I have not heard from any of those individuals. I know each and every single one of the people that called me personally, and they have not recontacted me. I know them because I'm close to the people in that gigantic county, and I talk to them. Lastly is I know that it is so important. When I was the administrator of a small city, our clerk was constantly struggling with accounting procedures and learning accounting procedures, and someone that they would appoint would have much greater ability to know the statutory requirements, accounting requirements of the various different agencies, and that's the purpose for the bill. I appreciate the amendment. However, I would have to ask that the members defeat the amendment.
Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members will Representative Quam yield for a question.
He will yield. Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just wondering, because I've been made aware of a particular case, if a county attorney were elected and then, say, a month into the term was appointed to a judgeship, a new county attorney is appointed, under your amendment, then am I to assume that that county attorney would have to stand for election in 2 years and not in 4 years when that term is up?
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And when that position would be due for an election is when, so that it'd be the same periodicity. So basically, you could have, if there's allowance for special elections now, there would be allowance for special elections. This would not change anything that's elected. It's only for appointed, where you're not going to be electing.
Speaker.
Representative Erdahl.
Thank you. I want to clarify that just a little bit more. I think it would be better if, as I read it, if someone is appointed to an elective office, that it be the first general election. That's what it says here. That the first general election, not his term, which would be 4 years, but the first general election, which would be 2 years.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I misunderstood your first question. You said someone that was elected. This amendment would not pertain to that position whatsoever, because it only refers to an office made, an appointive office. So therefore, only offices that are not elected but used to be. So like offices in the bill like this. So your example would not be affected one bit by this amendment.
Seeing no further discussion on the amendment, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The motion does not prevail. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File 629.
Third reading. Representative Dill.
Last thing I have to say about the bill, and I forgot and did not say in the beginning of the introduction, is that no person that presently is elected will be removed from office by this bill. They will be able to serve out the balance of their term, and then the county board will move forward in the terms of this bill that's before us.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 85 ayes and 42 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 1777.
House File 1777, number 1 on the calendar for today, the second engrossment, an act relating to taxation.
Calling the author of the bill, Representative Lenczewski.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Members, I want to thank you all for the importance of this bill that we're all working on today. And I want to first say very sincerely thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Senate Majority Leader Murphy and the members of my caucus. I want to thank Representative Doubt and Representative Davids and the members of your caucus, because it really has been nice to work very hard as quickly as we can to give middle-class tax cuts today together. Members, just very quickly on this bill, most people know what's in the bill, but this bill, members, is really designed to benefit Minnesotans, middle-class Minnesotans with tax cuts. $111 million in tax cuts for middle-income Minnesotans will be as part of the marriage penalty fix. We'll do tax benefits for folks who have adopted children, tax benefits for low-income working families through the expansion of the working family credit. We're also in the bill, these are just some of the highlights, we are going to provide tax cuts to people who have refinanced a home, gone through a foreclosure, had a short sale. Additionally, we are passing on the expansion of the deduction of the mortgage insurance premium. That'll affect 80,000 new homeowners in Minnesota. We also are going to give tax cuts to students and parents who are paying for college and for students who are paying off loans, and additional tax relief for classroom expenses, that deduction for teachers who are putting money out of their own pockets into the classroom. The other part of the bill, members, is that we're going to repeal the 3 business-to-business taxes that were enacted in the 2013 bill. And I think that pretty much sums it up. I think most members know what's in this bill. I just want to underline that I am so grateful that we are all moving quickly. The reason these 2 items are here before us, and why just these 2 items instead of a full and complete omnibus tax bill, is because of the timing. We need to do federal conformity right now because people are filing their taxes right now so they can get those tax cuts, and we need to repeal those business-to-business taxes that the surplus has allowed us to do. So I just again want to thank everyone for working together to move quickly. I also want to thank the governor for his strong support, and I look forward to talking a little bit about this today, but hopefully getting to a quick yes vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
There are a few amendments at the desk. Representative, the clerk will report the amendment.
Lenczewski moving to amend Senate House File 1777. The second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A24.
Representative Lenczewski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Lenczewski, thank you for bringing this bill forward. Representative Lenczewski, this is a good start. This is a good start. We know, members, and we remember that last session we piled on $450 of tax and fee increases for every man, woman, and child in the state of Minnesota. This legislature did that, and the governor signed the bill. And we are seeing now the results as we look at the new economic forecast from the February forecast. We are seeing the continuation of a trend, a trajectory, if you will, that began with the last 2 years in the Republican budget that actually paid off our bills in the state of Minnesota, replenished our reserve accounts, and now we're seeing that economy continue. And I can tell you that with the $1.2 billion surplus in the forecast, we are seeing that government is feeling its oats. But I can tell you that my constituents in rural Minnesota, especially those in the farm community that are in a position where they need to be able to pay these large property taxes that they are accumulating as property values continue to escalate in order to operate their operations. In the area of 40% increases in property taxes, many of our farm families are experiencing property taxes. The largest share of many crop producers' production budgets are killing many of our farm businesses right now. Members, we need to give relief and give it back to those farmers and small businesses in rural Minnesota that are struggling to make a go, partially because of the onerous taxes brought forward by this legislature in the last session. Members, I bring forward the 824 amendment to Representative Lenczewski's bill. As I mentioned, the Representative's, Madam Chair's bill is a very good start, but we've got $700 million more of the people's money that is sitting here in St. Paul, and we need to give it back. Members, this bill, or this amendment, excuse me, would begin the necessary work to give it back to our rural farm families, their money that has been taken by this legislature unnecessarily and is sitting here in St. Paul. Members, this amendment would repeal the gift tax placed on farm businesses last session by this legislature and signed into law by the governor. That is not in the bill, and we need to, Madam Chair, find a way this session to give it back. The gift tax is very difficult on our farm families that are struggling to be able to transfer their farms to the next generation, to the young people that are out there to produce food and fiber for our generations yet to come. So it repeals that onerous 10% gift tax on our Minnesota farm families. It also repeals the wheelage tax authority that was extended to rural counties, allowing 5 county commissioners in a county to increase taxes on Minnesota's farmers, other small businesses, and their families. This tax is a $10 per vehicle tax now, and it will be allowed to double after 2018. It repeals that authority and restores it back to where the law was before last year's onerous $2.1 billion tax increase. Another provision in the amendment, members, repeals the provision that forces conservation easement acres on farmland to be assessed at the same rate as adjoining arable farmland. So what we are telling farmers is, you know, folks, you had in your budgets, farmers, you had penciled in X amount for property taxes on those acres that you cannot even farm. You can't even farm those acres, and you had understood that the property tax was going to be at the amount it's been. We are telling these farmers, and we told them, it's in law, we're forcing the assessor to jack up the assessed rate to that same rate as adjoining arable farmland, providing for them a property tax expense on those unusable acres that they never anticipated, maybe decades ago. Members, another provision in the amendment rescinds the up to $300 per pupil school board approved levy. A tax increase, a property tax increase passed in the last tax bill by this legislature that took away Minnesota voters' ability to determine on their own as voters, as landowners, as taxpayers, as citizens, whether or not a particular school district should increase a tax levy on the lands that the farmers and the other businesses own throughout our districts. The amendment also repeals the $20 million new school statewide property tax that this legislature placed onerously upon Minnesota's farm families, that is again making it more and more difficult for them to operate in their very difficult production budgets. The amendment also repeals the third-tier school referendum levy equalization that provides again for the ability for voters to approve school levies. That ability was taken away from them by this legislature and placed in the hands of school districts. What the amendment does not address, members, is it does not address yet the estate tax penalty that our farm families are now under because we failed to act and increase the exemption that our farm families would have as they attempt to transfer their farms after the death of a farm owner. Many of these farm families, we know, if they're placed in the position that current law is, and current law was established last year, if they're placed in that position upon the death of an owner, what many of them will end up with is the need to liquidate a large portion of that farm just to pay the estate taxes on it. Members, this bill is a start. And Representative Lenczewski, thank you again for the bill. It's a start. Members, the tax and fee increase last session was $450 for every man, woman, and child in Minnesota. This bill reduces it $95. Members, this will leave an outstanding $355 for every man, woman, and child that we have taken from them, that we have the ability to mitigate and offset if we do what's right and take the people's money that's sitting here in St. Paul and give it back. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, at this point, I would withdraw the amendment.
Representative Driscollowski withdraws his amendment. There is another amendment at the desk. Sarah? There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Anderson S. moving to amend House File 1777. The second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A29.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. We've had a lot of conversations about this tax bill for the last, probably 7 months, 8 months. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from my constituents. And the federal tax conformity that's part of this bill is one of them. And what I must say is, in this bill as it's currently drafted, we actually don't take care of the marriage penalty for 2013. It's extended beyond that. And so folks that rely on that marriage penalty deduction are not going to see that in their tax bill this year. And just to give you an idea of who those folks are, we're talking about 650,000 families here in the state of Minnesota that are going to be negatively impacted because this bill neglects to take care of them in 2013. On top of that, of those 650,000 families, the vast majority of them, these are the words of the tax chair, but the vast majority of them actually earn less than $75,000. Given the fact that our economy isn't always that great right now, these folks could benefit from having this tax break now rather than being delayed until later. And if we are truly going to have a true repeal and federal conformity bill, this is our opportunity to fix that. And looking forward to the future, it's my commitment that we continue to have this federal conformity for the marriage penalty in particular. But this amendment takes care of it for the here and now, so we can give those families, 650,000 Minnesota families earning less than $75,000, we can give them that relief today and now. So I'd ask for your support and ask for a roll call, Mr. Speaker.
A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Lenczewski.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Anderson, and thank you for your work on the Tax Committee. Members, I would urge you to vote no on this amendment. It's a matter of choice here with the amount of resources we have in this bill. What the Anderson amendment does, members, is it pays for the 2013 marriage penalty fix by using the money for the permanent fix for the marriage penalty going forward. So the way I think that helps you think about this a little bit is, given a choice, would you want to receive $115 for 1 year or $115 for the rest of your life? The money that Representative Anderson is using to buy the 2013 $115 tax cut is that money where you would get that tax cut for the rest of your life. And that's what we call permanent conformity. I would note that in 2011 and in 2010, the same provision was not conformed to when the majorities were different. And I know there was a deficit, but there was a deficit last year and we conformed then. And we really want folks to think about this choice long and hard. It would be great to do all of it, but I would ask you to vote no, because the way the marriage penalty for 2013 is being paid for is to take away the permanent marriage penalty fix for all married filers for all time. And how is that possible? Well, the federal government members, they passed finally, instead of passing this marriage penalty fix year after year and asking us to conform, they conformed to it forever. And Representative Anderson's amendment uses the money that would allow all married filers to get this tax cut year after year after year after year to pay for it just for 1 year. So I would urge a no vote.
Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. I appreciate your commentary, Representative Lenczewski, and I appreciate your noting that there are limited resources in this bill, because I think that the story here today is less about what's in this bill and more about what's not in this bill. Last Friday we found out that the state of Minnesota has a surplus, that the taxpayers of the state of Minnesota have been overtaxed. And unfortunately right now Minnesota families aren't seeing the same kind of budget surplus that the state is. One statistic that I think is very important to remember right now in these economic times is that 49% of Minnesotans are underemployed. The best thing that we can do with this surplus is put it back in the pockets and into the family budgets of the people of Minnesota that need it the most. Let's put it back into Minnesota families' budgets and into their pockets, because that's where this money can be the most beneficial. The cost of this bill, $503 million in this biennium, but yet we have a little more than $1.2 billion surplus. And as I said, today it's less about what's in this bill and more about what's not in this bill. My hope is that not only can we do this marriage deduction for people in 2013, but we can also do that in a future bill for the 2014 filers. And Madam Chair, I think maybe you misinformed the members here of this body when you said that this wasn't a permanent thing going forward. I believe that all this amendment does is takes the money from 2014, puts it to 2013, but then after that it would be permanent going forward. I don't believe that this deals with the out biennium, so I think we need to correct the record on that. But it's important to remember that the reason there are limited resources in this bill is because Democrats have only allowed this bill to be $503 million. They are only interested in giving back $503 million in this bill. That's why there's a constraint. Believe me, if we could, we'd give this deduction to these people that need it so badly in 2013, 14, and permanently. Because it's Minnesota families that need this relief, not Minnesota government. And Minnesota government, under Democrat leadership, is spending a record more than $4 billion increased spending in the current biennium. That was the budget that was passed out of this chamber last year and that was signed into law. Over $4 billion increased spending. And if we don't give this money back to the taxpayers that paid it in, that number could be more than $4.7 billion. Now, I don't know if this is an early indication, the fact that the tax bill coming out of the House of Representatives today is only at $500 million when we have a $1.2 billion surplus. I don't play poker, but I'm guessing this is an inkle that $700 million is going to be spent by Democrats in the state of Minnesota, and that money won't be turned back to taxpayers who really need it. And that's unfortunate. So the fact that there are limited resources in this bill has nothing to do with this amendment or anything other than Democrats have limited this bill to that number. And that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the fact that $700 million worth of surplus has not been included in this bill. And I hope that Democrats think very carefully before they go spending the taxpayers' money. We already have an about 11% increase in spending just this 2-year period. Probably the highest spending increase in state history. And what do Democrats inkle to the general public and to the taxpayers today? That number is likely to increase by another $700 million. This money belongs to taxpayers. It belongs to the people that need it. Minnesota families. We have an obligation to serve them first. And what we need to do, members, is give that money back. Let's put it in their pockets. You want to help Minnesota's economy? Let's put that money into the pockets of Minnesota families who aren't seeing the kind of budget surplus that the state of Minnesota is seeing right now. Let's give it back. They're the ones who need it. They're the ones who are struggling to make their budgets and ends meet. They're the ones who have a 49% underemployment rate. That means that half of Minnesotans are working at a job with a lower income or at a lower skill level than they're accustomed to. Half of Minnesotans. This is an opportunity to show Minnesotans that with this amendment, we're going to give them that money right now for 2013, retroactive. This is the quickest way you can put money into the pockets of Minnesotans. They're filing their taxes right now. Let's give them their money back. And then let's follow back up with another tax bill that allows us to do the same thing for 2014. That's what we need to do, and that's what Minnesota families want us to do. Let's give them their money back. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Lenczewski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Doubt. And I do want to correct. I've double-checked now with nonpartisan staff on the drafting, and it's probably an oversight by Representative Anderson, but there is no conformity going forward. It doesn't take it from 14 and pay for 13 and then it comes back on in 15. It is just for 23-13 and then it ends. So members, again, this amendment would say that rather having all Minnesotans who are married get federal conformity and a tax cut for the rest of time, they would only get it for 1 year, and I would urge people to vote no.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Folks, when we were in the tax committee, we had the opportunity to amend the tax bill. And at that time, the budget resolution wasn't in place, and there was no constraints on us. And in that committee, I offered this very same amendment, except it was going forward to be permanent and giving those families the tax relief that they deserve. Now, I remember in 2012, around November, I heard a lot of comments about folks saying that they were going to help middle-class families. Yet when push comes to shove and the opportunity to respond is right here today, what we're seeing is fits and sputters and no willingness to work on this. We have the opportunity to help those families, 650,000 families earning less than $75,000, the middle class of the state of Minnesota and the lower income class of this state, and we are sitting here on our hands and saying we can't do it, our hands are tied. We had the opportunity to fix this all, but here I see a willingness to not do anything. And to say to the 2012 promises that were made, well, we just made those. That's a typical politician promise. We didn't really mean it. Here's the opportunity, here and now, for the folks that have been paying these taxes and suffering. We can give the relief today and make a promise to do it for the future. Please vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 58 ayes and 69 nays, the amendment does not prevail. The motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Lewin moving to amend House File 1777. The second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded DE2.
Representative Lewin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Well, my amendment does half of what Representative Anderson was trying to accomplish, so I'm hoping the members will take another look at this issue, and it's specifically going to the dependent care credit. And again, dependent care is basically helping offset the cost of daycare for lower income families with little kids. That's basically where the rubber hits the road on this amendment. And it's important to remember, I talked about this when I did the minority report earlier this week, but who these families are. Fully 80% of the families that take advantage of this are single head of household filers with young children. We're talking about primarily young single mothers that have daycare expenses. The federal government gives them a tax credit to help offset the cost of these daycare expenses. The state does something not completely the same, but similar. Except this year, this bill, House File 1777, says this year for taxes being filed right now between now and April 15th for taxable year 2013, no dependent care credit for you from the state of Minnesota. So the $80 or so that you would get back to help offset those high costs of daycare, the state's going to keep that this year, because it's just not convenient for us right now to take a little money out of the $1.2 billion surplus we have to give it to young families, to families with young children for their daycare costs. Members, I honestly can't believe that we are talking about this right now. If there isn't a justifiable tax credit more deserving than this, then I'm not sure what is. Daycare costs are incredibly expensive in the state of Minnesota. We talk about this frequently when it's talking about health and human services bills or education bills, people struggling through the recession. We have a very high number of dual income families. Both parents are working. Again, I pointed out a lot of single parents that use this credit. And we can't take a little bit of money and make sure that they get credit back from the state along with credit from the federal government that they are going to get. That we are not going to conform to that. And what my amendment proposes doing, because again we've got this budget resolution situation, I again tried to up the budget resolution to give some additional tax relief today that was rejected in Ways and Means. So we've got to have a pay for. So I'm saying for that telecommunication sales tax exemption that's in the bill, let's delay that for 1 month. For 1 month. So we'll delay it until the end of April, and the money that we'll save or book from that, we'll give it to those families with young children. I think that's a pretty fair trade-off, and I think it's an important one that we need to make today. So members, please think with your hearts and think with your heads about this and what we are saying to Minnesotans. Low-income people with young children with high daycare costs, do we really want to say we can't give you back your $80? It's just not convenient for us right now. Vote for this amendment.
There is an amendment to the amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hoppy moving to amend House File 1777, the second engrossment. The delete everything amendment as follows. The amendment is coded A27.
Representative Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Making sure I'm on the right amendment here. Mr. Speaker and members, this is an amendment that would give Minnesotans who don't have insurance by the end of this month under the exchange, MNsure, a credit equal to what they would have to pay in penalty to the federal government, to the IRS. We don't know exactly what the number is. The best guess is somewhere between 50 and 70,000 Minnesotans are not going to have insurance by the end of this month, which is what the federal law says they have to have. Sometimes it's because they choose not to. Sometimes it's because they just don't know. But it's very possible that they tried to get insurance and it just hasn't gone all the way through yet. It might have gone through and they just might not know. So as people are now filling out their taxes and starting to think about these things, at the end of this month, everybody has to have insurance, health insurance. That's the law. So if people don't, and they're going to have to pay a federal penalty, this amendment would refund that money to them, whatever the penalty they have to pay to the government, and they'd pay the federal government and get a Minnesota tax credit back. Mr. Speaker and members, that's the amendment, and I would like a roll call, please.
A roll call has been requested. There are 15 hands. There will be a roll call. Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members, and Representative Hoppe. Thank you for your amendment. And as I read the amendment, what it reads to me is that Minnesota taxpayers will refund the cost of the penalty charged to those who don't purchase insurance. So therefore, we will provide a refund. Minnesotans will provide a refund. Minnesota taxpayers will provide a refund for those who violate the law. And while I understand your perspective, I do think that this is a matter of personal responsibility. And I think that it is an expectation that we follow the law. And so I'm not sure this is, the best course. But let me say one more thing. And this part's, I think, important. MNsure got off to a very difficult start. I think that's been well covered, and I know it's an issue for you and your caucus, something that you talk about frequently. I do want to make just a couple of points about the status of MNsure today. To date, more than 112,000 Minnesotans have selected health insurance plans through MNsure, the online marketplace, and enrollment is up 51% since January. That's a great turnaround. 93% of those stock cases that were pending have been resolved since December. Nearly 170,000 people are answering the phones in the call center, and hold times are down to under 3 minutes. That's a 95% reduction since December. Minnesotans have until March 31st to purchase coverage or enroll in a public program to avoid that tax penalty. Minnesotans are a law-abiding bunch. I think that the reason why it is important that everybody participate in our healthcare system is because everyone has some skin in the game. So members, I think MNsure got off to a rough start. It has greatly improved. Minnesotans are going to be able to avail themselves of coverage with the lowest rates in the country. That's a good Minnesota story. I don't think that we should give a tax refund to those who are avoiding or breaking the law, and for that reason, I'd ask you to vote no.
Representative Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members and Representative Murphy and Mr. Speaker, it is an issue for our caucus, you're right. And I believe it's also an issue for your caucus. It's an issue for the people of the state of Minnesota. And there might very well be people out there that know that this is the law and have willfully chosen to ignore it. And you're right. If that's the case, we shouldn't be helping those people. But I would submit to you, members, that it's very possible that all the problems we've had with MNsure, that there are a significant number of those up to 70,000 Minnesotans that might be getting penalized, that this is going to come as a complete shock to. I think there are still people out there that don't know they need to have the insurance. I think they don't know that they're going to get penalized, and I think the end of this month is going to come up rather quickly for them. And I would not be shocked to find out that every one of us has people in their district that are going to wind up getting penalized for this. So yes, it's an issue for our caucus. I think it's an issue for all of us. And we look at MNsure, and Representative Murphy, you're right. Things are going in a better direction, and more people are getting signed up. MNsure's done a lot of advertising. I haven't seen one advertisement from MNsure that's talked about the deadline and it's talked about people that are going to have to pay a penalty. So it could be that people just don't know, but if we have 70,000 people in the state that aren't going to have health insurance by the end of this month, and some of them might have tried very hard to get it, I think the least we can do is they're going to have to pay the federal government. I think we could give them a tax credit. I appreciate your support for this amendment, members.
Representative Davids.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to talk in support of Representative Hoppy's amendment here, and I respectfully disagree with my good friend Leader Murphy on a few issues here. First of all, I agree with Representative Murphy 100% that we should not be helping those folks that have violated the law. I agree 100%. But there's several problems with that. First of all, that we were supposed to have 160,000 enrollees. By now we've got about 51,000. There should be 69,000 on the commercial market. We're at about 31,000. MNsure still is unable to move applications to the carriers flawlessly. 70% of the uninsured are not aware that there's a deadline of March 31st. So without the Hoppy Amendment, we are making a whole lot of Minnesotans criminals, is what we're doing. This Hoppy Amendment is needed. As I said, we're going to be making a whole lot of folks in Minnesota criminals, and they don't even know it. MNsure is the biggest disaster financially and in other ways that this state has ever seen. So members, please support the Hoppy Amendment. Don't make Minnesotans that are not signed up, in some cases at no fault of their own. We will have situations where people have signed up for MNsure. MNsure will not get it to the carriers. They will be in violation of law. They will be penalized at absolutely no fault of their own. Members, this is a really, really good amendment. It may be such that President Obama unilaterally shifts this out a couple years, like he's made 28 changes already. I hope he does. It's a very, very bad law that is not working, cannot work, will not work. So members, if you vote red on this amendment, you are going to be making Minnesotans criminals, and many of them have done everything right. They went to the website. They slaved away for 10 hours, 15 hours, pulling their hair out. I went to constituents' homes and they said, "Would you help us?" And I said, "Well, I can't. Yes, I'm a licensed insurance agent, but I cannot help you with this because I did not take the classes to do it." And the horror stories came in one after another after another. So when Senator Harry Reid gets up on the United States Senate floor and said all the horror stories about Obamacare are lies, what planet is he living on? I'm dealing with this every day. You are dealing with this every day. And unless we pass the Hoppy Amendment, we are making Minnesotans, through no fault of their own, criminals. Vote for the Hoppy Amendment.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Davids, for that iteration about how terrible MNsure has been. And one thing that he didn't mention is that much of what's going on at MNsure now, because they can't send the applications to the providers, is they're going through this manually by spreadsheets. Now, if you don't think there's an opportunity there for error, we got another thing coming. And personal responsibility, Leader Murphy, yeah, people are taking personal responsibility, as Representative David says. They've spent hours upon hours at their computers trying to get into this insurance program. And let's talk a little bit more about personal responsibility when it comes to MNsure. We have a governor that signed us into law and pushed it and won't even take personal responsibility for it, is trying to remove himself from it, saying he doesn't know what's going on with it. So if we're going to start pointing fingers at Minnesotans who innocently are trying to get their insurance, I think we better point a finger back at our own governor who won't take personal responsibility for the largest debacle in state history.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 58 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There is another amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hoppe moving to amend House File 1777. The second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A30.
Representative Hoppe to the A30 amendment.
Mr. Speaker, give me 1 second here. Just want to make sure I'm on the right amendment. There's 4 of them. Stephen, prove it. Is this the right? Mr. Speaker, can we temporarily lay this one on the table, please?
Sure. There's another amendment to the amendment at the desk. It's the A31 amendment.
Hoppe moving to amend House File 17, the amendment to House File 1777 as follows. The amendment is coded A31.
Representative Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That one I could read with my cheaters. Members, this is another MNsure amendment, and this one is different than the previous one. There are some people that lost their insurance policies under the previous policies that they had due to the terms of the Affordable Care Act. People lost insurance policies. So what this amendment essentially says is that if they lost their policy and they're paying a higher premium this year, whatever the difference is, we would give them a tax credit on their Minnesota taxes. If they've got to pay more money for health insurance, whatever the coverage, whether they're paying more or not, they would get that credit for any money, notwithstanding any other credits for that they got under the ACA, but we give them a credit for that money for the difference between what they were paying and what they're paying now. And members, I would, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to get a roll call on that, please.
A roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Huntley.
Mr. Speaker and members, what this amendment would do is absolutely nothing. If you would read the law that we passed last year, it says a health carrier must not refuse to renew an individual health plan except for non-payment of premiums, fraud, or misrepresentation. So nobody did not get their policy renewed. Now, insurance companies have the right every year to make minor changes in your policy. They have the right to raise your rates every year if the Commerce Department agrees to it. And what this says is that they can't raise the rates because we have to pay them the same as they paid in 2013. I don't know anybody that thinks their health insurance isn't going to go up every year. This one locks it into where it was in 2014, and none of these people were canceled. So this bill is just the opposite of the unsession. We're supposed to get rid of things that don't work. This is something that won't affect anybody, so I urge you to vote no.
Representative Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Huntley. I appreciate, as always, your perspective. And it might be technically true that nobody lost their health care coverage, but if we're passing a federal law, the Affordable Care Act, that so substantially changes what people were getting covered for with their health insurance. So if you might say they're not losing it, but a lot of people don't have the policies that they had before the ACA passed as a direct result of the law that passed. So if they don't have those policies and the new law is that they have to go buy a new policy, I'm going to say that they lost their coverage because of that, and at least some of those people are going to be paying more money. I've heard from some of them. So if they're paying, all the amendment says is that if they're paying more for health care, for health coverage, for health insurance than they did before the ACA took over, they get a state tax credit for it. So Representative Huntley, thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate it, and members, I would still urge a green vote.
Representative Gruenhagen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise in support of Representative Hoppy's amendment. I am a authorized counselor or agent for the ACA exchange in the state of Minnesota. I've sold health insurance for over 30 years, and in my opinion, the ACA has been a major disaster for individual and small group market in the state of Minnesota. I have quite a few customers. Out of all of them, only 3 had a decrease in their premium. Out of families, individuals, whatever, without substantially raising their deductible and having way more out-of-pocket cost. Remember the promise that Obama made? The family's health insurance premium is going to go down about $2,500 per year. Well, mine members haven't gone down. About 98% of them have gone straight up. And in addition to that, when they've made the changes, many of them are now out of network to the doctor that they wanted. Because I border the 7-county metro area, and they live outstate, and they've gone to doctors in the 7-county metro area. Now their deductible is not only higher and their premium's higher, now their deductibles even doubled even more because they're now out of network. The other thing I'd just say, I would completely agree with previous comments on our side. The ACA is an economic and health care disaster. The latest CBO figures show that nationwide we are going to lose 2 million members, 2 million full-time jobs because of the Unaffordable Care Act. And when confronted with those facts, Congressman Keith Ellison basically said, well, families will be able to spend more time at home and not work so many unreasonable hours. Okay, that was a direct quote off of a news station. So this is going to cost the economy. We're putting billions into bureaucracy, and we're reducing the reimbursement to the doctor-patient relationship. But that's not the worst of it, ladies and gentlemen. I've heard from people who are already under the ACA are having their health care treatment restricted. Got an email from a lady in my district. She either has MS or MD. I can't remember it right offhand. But she's been getting vitamin B shots for several years to help her cope with her disease. Now under the ACA and the health care, it is no longer covered. Her doctor told her, according to her email, this is crazy. You need this vitamin B shot. It's no longer covered under the ACA, and she can't afford to pay for it herself. And this is the point I want to bring out more than anything else. The technical problems with MNsure are minor. What's going to be the major problem is the type of health care that you receive under the ACA. President Obama has made over 25 changes to the ACA without congressional approval. Many people believe that's unconstitutional. And he's made those changes because he's tried to avoid the skyrocketing cost of the mandates of the ACA for both political and higher cost reasons. But remember, members, ultimately, in my opinion, and I have talked to numerous medical people, heart surgeons, nurses, and others, We're increasing bureaucracy, government and health, and in the healthcare system, and we're decreasing what's happening in the doctor-patient relationship. What's going to happen out of this, members, is we are going to wind up with a two-tier healthcare system. One for the rich, one for the politically connected, and one for the special interest, and then one for the rest of us, ladies and gentlemen. And when you're one that's not in the politically connected or rich area, you're going to get second-rate health care, and that's going to damage one of the best health care systems in the world right here in the state of Minnesota. That's the primary problem with Obamacare and MNsure. It's going to create a two-tier health care system that is going to damage the health care that the citizens of this state need. I strongly urge you to support Representative Hoppy's amendment. We should repeal MNsure and assert state rights in order to protect our citizens from the second-rate health care that's coming down the pipe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You know, I'm sitting here trying to hold my tongue because I don't want this to be a debate about anything but the tax bill that we're actually debating here today. But I just can't let some of those statements go by, Mr. Speaker. You know, to say that we've created a two-tier healthcare system, holy cow, that's what we're trying to get away from. People who don't have insurance die for lack of insurance. For the first time, a lot of Minnesotans are going to actually have coverage who could never have it before. They're going to actually have the possibility of going to a doctor when they get sick. You know, I never thought the Affordable Care Act was perfect. I don't think anybody in this room ever thought it was perfect. But man, to say that now we're going to have a two-tier healthcare system, you know, this country has gotten the income inequality in this country has just gotten to be unbelievable. It's such a great chasm. But at the very least, we're helping Minnesotans be able to have insurance. And that is something that we can be very, very proud of. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to let it go at that. And thank you very much.
Representative Davids.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Just a couple things here. First of all, technically, Representative Hundley, Chairman Hundley, is correct. Minnesota is a non-can state, but what people received was a letter saying to conform with the ACA, you have to do this, this, and this, and pay 4 times the premium for less coverage. And so, according to the economist of MNsure, which is Gruber Gorman, they said that 280,000 folks in Minnesota, that their plans do not conform with the ACA. They have junk plans, which just, by the way, happen to have better coverage, lower deductibles, lower premiums. And now, our good president, I believe it was yesterday, postponed for 2 years he's going to allow people to keep their junk plans for 2 more years. I've heard over on the party opposite that we have to have personal responsibility. We agree. But where is the personal responsibility for MNsure? Where is it? They're projecting tens of millions of dollars of deficits. Where's the personal responsibility there? But let's vote green on the Hoppy Amendment and let's talk taxes.
Not quite yet. Representative Abler.
Yeah, just wait a little bit. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and I predict this won't be the only day we talk about this, but I could be wrong. And so we discussed these bills a lot last session, and I'm sorry Representative Atkins isn't here today because one of the campaign promises I've made is to always work hard and do my best and then tell the truth. And so I believe everybody here meant to tell the truth when they were passing the bill last year. Representative Atkins stood up, and other people, they made some promises. You can keep your plan. It's going to cost you less. And it's going to be as easy as Expedia. That was what we heard about. Some of us over here said, well, maybe not so easy, maybe not so cheap, but we offered advice, and it wasn't very well taken, and that's fine. That's the prerogative that you had. But this is the way you guys can keep your promise, at least so they won't lose any money on what happened to them. Because it seems to me if you make a promise that doesn't come true, you need to pay the consequence of that. And I don't know the fiscal note on this thing, but I can tell you who's going to be, that's even a different discussion, Mr. Chair, but I can tell you who's not going to be penalized. Big business has been carved out by executive order. The president decided there was a law that got passed that he just didn't have to abide by because big business will be troubled by having to meet these standards. And then medium-sized businesses, well, they're having a hard time, and so we're going to carve them out. You know who didn't get carved out, Mr. Speaker and members? Individuals. The individuals who are going to have to pay all this stuff and all the surprises, the people who sat on that long, long wait time and then discovered that they have a much higher deductible, a way narrower network as the plans were changed to conform and all the bidding and all that went on beyond their control when they thought they were just going to be fine. And so it seems to me, just based upon good, honest Minnesota behavior, Mr. Speaker, that I think you should urge your members to in fact stand behind the promises they made and say, we meant it, we thought you could keep your plan, we thought it would cost you less, we thought it would be so easy to use that website. Well, we're sorry, but at least you're not going to get penalized economically, and so we're going to give you this credit, and we're working on the rest of it, and you'll be happy. So today, we're going to give you this credit back. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge your members just to take a point of personal privilege, if you would, and tell your members this is an awesome amendment. It'll be good for them and good for Minnesota. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know you can't amend an amendment, but referring to this as to the federal legislation's Affordable Care Act, it was Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. And too often, once the ink dried, it was abbreviated, and we left out the patient protection. And as we look at this amendment and others, we ought to try and put back the patient protection. We had comments about how it's improved. Well, frankly, I've got constituents repeatedly calling me, and they're now not allowed to have the options that we Minnesotans gave. So I think Minnesota did a better job, but we can't change that now. But frankly, whatever we can to bring back a little bit of Minnesota common sense to this federally imposed situation, I support. So let's go ahead and vote yes on this amendment.
Representative Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. When MNsure became law in the state of Minnesota here and my constituents started getting affected by it, I heard from quite a few people, whether it be email or phone call, and quite a few text messages. This text message, dated back in December, from a business owner in my district says, Mary, just got our health insurance notice. Mine doubled to $1,150 a month with a $10,000 deductible. I texted him back, and then we eventually connected on the phone. But that's a $575 increase. Think about that. $575 more out of the budget of his family. Perhaps in that family, that might mean a little less food on the table, maybe a little less activities for the children, maybe family fun night may have to be cut out of the budget. But this is one person, and there's many more stories out there of the same thing. It pains me to tell my constituents that there is nothing that I can do because this is a federal issue. What happens when those families have to decide if they're going to keep a roof over their head or if they're going to forego?
Mr. Speaker, I'm having a difficult time hearing Representative Franzen.
Members, it may get to the point where our constituents are having to decide to keep a roof over their head, food on the table, or forego health insurance. And like I said, I'm tired of telling my constituents that there's nothing that we here at the Minnesota State Legislature can do about MNsure because it's a federal program. It's a federal law. But it gives me great hope that Representative Hoppe offered this amendment to allow those families that have seen increases in their health insurance premium, that this amendment would give a credit to that increase. Members, we don't want our families having to decide if they're going to put less food on the table or have to tell their children that they will not be able to be in track this summer or in baseball this summer because of the increase in insurance. So I implore you to just look inside your heart. We've got over $1 billion surplus. You raised over $2.1 billion. You raised that amount of money in taxes last year. Let's help our families keep a roof over their head and food on the table. Thank you.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I would like to thank Representative Hoppe for bringing this amendment forward. This is exactly the kind of thing that we need to do, is to provide a little peace of mind to Minnesotans who really have been struggling as this economy has begun to recover. And unfortunately, some of the policies passed here in the Minnesota legislature haven't helped Minnesota families. They've made it worse. And health care or health insurance is just one more thing that Minnesotans now are paying more for because of policies that Democrats here in the Minnesota legislature have passed. We learned last week that now property taxes, Minnesota has the highest property tax levy in state history because of the policies of Democrats in the state of Minnesota. Income tax rates, business-to-business taxes, credits that we haven't complied with on the federal level, and the list goes on and on and on. And what we've done is take what Democrats have done with Minnesota Care is made the health insurance that Minnesotans count on and rely on more expensive. And I think this allows Democrats in this chamber to live up to the promise that they made to Minnesotans and one of the goals of MNsure, which was lower cost health insurance for Minnesota families. Remember, it was lower cost and greater access. Those were the goals, not only of Obamacare, but of MNsure here in Minnesota. Lower cost and more access. But where are we today? Minnesotans are paying more for health insurance. And at this point, we've learned already that 280,000 Minnesotans have lost their policies. Despite the promises of politicians in Washington and here in St. Paul, 280,000 Minnesotans have lost their policies. They didn't get to keep the policy that they wanted. But this goes a long ways. This amendment allows Democrats to say, you know what, we understand. If it's been a rocky start, we don't know what's going to happen. Is the program going to settle down a little bit? Rates going to come down? At this point, the projections of the people who are going into MNsure, the populations, point to a rate increase. We don't have enough of the healthier, younger people signing up for MNsure. We're lagging behind projections somewhere in the 20% range. And we have people going into the public programs where the government is paying at much higher rates than were projected. But this says to Minnesotans, you know what, if you've had an increase in the cost of your health care because of MNsure, send us the bill and we'll pay it. It allows Democrats to live up to the promise they've made to Minnesotans. So this is your opportunity, members, to live up to the promises you've made, to put in place a tax credit that says you've had a higher cost on your health insurance, send us the bill. The state of Minnesota will pick up the tab. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that this amendment may not be going to pass today. And we're going to take more money out of the pockets of Minnesotans. So not only does today's tax bill fall short of what we should be doing, but it doesn't look like Democrats are going to support an amendment that lives up to their promises to Minnesotans. So Democrats, join with us. This is your lifeline. This is your safety net. Join with us. We want to help you live up to the promises you made to Minnesotans. Because a no vote today says it's okay with you that Minnesotans pay more for the health coverage. That was okay. So this is your opportunity, members. Don't let it pass you by.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 59 ayes and 68 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There is another amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hoppe moving to amend the Loon Amendment to House File 1777 as follows. The amendment is coded A32.
Representative Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to withdraw that amendment, please.
We are on the Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise for a point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're honored today with the presence of Jack Zimmerman. Jack Zimmerman is from Cleveland, Minnesota, actually a constituent of Tony Cornish, but is a good friend of our family. He is an Afghan war veteran and a hero. He is a part of the Wounded Warriors Project, and I would like to stand and give him some applause for his efforts on the part of the United States and for his sacrifices on our behalf.
Now we're on the Loon Amendment. Representative Lenczewski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I want to thank Representative Loon. She's been working at this, and I think she accurately described the value of the dependent care credit members. And I would urge you to support the Loon Amendment. I think Representative Loon has found a creative way to pay for that, and we hadn't had a way to do that in the bill. And we appreciate that by what she's doing. If you missed it, if you were in a conversation, as she's moving that date of enactment up 1 month so that we can retroactively afford the dependent care credit. The bill already had it permanently, but we didn't have it for 2013, and I would urge a yes vote on the Loon Amendment.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 1777 as amended.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Representative Gruenhagen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Ann, thanks again for bringing, or Chair Lenczewski, thanks again for bringing this bill forward. I appreciate it. I also appreciate your expertise in understanding the impact that it's having on our business community in the state of Minnesota and why it's so necessary that we repeal those damaging business taxes. But I do have to tell you one story from a business owner in my district. They happened to repair implements, and they were being audited by the state on their sales taxes. So the owner's wife was discussing with the auditor from the state, how do I apply this new implement repair tax? And the owner basically said, well, if the individual brings in a bobcat and he says that he can that he's using it for personal use, you don't have to charge the tax. If he states that he's using it for business use, you have to charge the tax. Now, I told a few farmers this story, and one of them said, "You mean if I just use the combine to cut grass around the house, I'm not going to have to pay the sales tax?" I mean, the confusion and I guess convoluted approach of this type of a tax, I think is a lesson that we need to be careful of what we pass in the future, and I sincerely appreciate this bill to repeal those taxes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Dean.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Lenczewski, for bringing this forward. Thank you on behalf of all of the small businesses in the state of Minnesota. And on the filers, the business taxes, but also on the filers that will now have conformity and can now do their taxes and move this up. And this is tax relief. There's no two ways about it. But, and I do appreciate it. I do appreciate you bringing it forward. But I have to say, you'll have to forgive me. You'll have to forgive me if I don't join you in patting ourselves on the back for this. Because this is a tax relief on top of a tax increase from last year. You know, and this is undoing some of the damage from last year that was done. And I would wonder if Representative Winkler, if we had lowered instead of raised the minimum wage, what if we said that the minimum wage was $4 an hour last year? And we said this year we're going to raise the minimum wage back, we're going to make it $4.50. Would you really be asking the state of Minnesota to congratulate you for raising the minimum wage? I don't think so. Representative Marquardt, if we had cut $300 a kid for every kid in the state of Minnesota last year in our schools, and we came back this year, we said, hallelujah, we found some more money, we're going to restore $25. Please join us in patting ourselves on the back. You really think we'd be doing that? I don't think you would be celebrating an increase to funding and education. So please forgive me if I don't join you in asking the state of Minnesota to pat us on the back for restoring this. This is not a tax cut. This is an amendment to last year's bill undoing some of the hardship. So please, please, please forgive me for not joining in the self-congratulatory episode that we have here today. Please forgive me for doing that, for not joining with you on that. Because I think if you go home into your districts, you will find that people don't have enough money to pay for the tax increases that you imposed upon them last year. This is not helping them to the extent that we can restore jobs into the state of Minnesota. Give the money back. Give the money back. So thank you for helping us, help Minnesota taxpayers with their filing. Thank you for helping Minnesota businesses just a little bit more. But again, please forgive me. Please forgive me for not congratulating ourselves as I think we're trying to do here. So I appreciate you moving this forward, Representative Lenczewski. I wish we could go a little further.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, last session we heard a lot of feedback from citizens across the state of Minnesota telling us the negative impact that these taxes would have on them and the businesses and the jobs that would be lost. We heard from warehouse and logistics companies across the state, from Red Wing, Lionel Lakes, Greenfield, all over the state of Minnesota, saying this is going to cost them jobs. And they were right. And we had the chance to stop it, but that opportunity was not taken. I think it was last week, we heard in tax committee when we were talking about this repeal, one of the companies was Strategic Warehousing. They're just in the South Metro area. And since the warehouse tax has been in place, they have lost 18% of their workforce. They had to lay off 18% of their workforce. And you know who those folks are? They said they're primarily citizens that have a GED, folks that need that job more than anybody else. And yet we marched on back in May. You marched on. Since then, that business has moved 4,500 pallets to Iowa. Iowa. When I asked the question to them, do you think you'll be able to recoup those jobs? Are you going to be able to bring back that 18% of the lost workforce? And they said, it's going to be tough. They weren't the only example, though. We also had the company of Distribution Alternatives based out of Lino Lakes. They have been in the state of Minnesota as a family-owned business for 70 years. They said in their 70-year history in the state of Minnesota as a family-owned business, this was the first time that they hired a lobbyist. Because who was attacking them? Not other businesses, not other states, but their own government. They have 120 employees. Out of those 120 employees, 26 of them have been with the company for 24 years. And you know what? One of those employees is my constituent. You know what she wrote to me? She said, I am too old to get retrained for something else. This is my job, and I don't want to lose it, and I don't want to move out of the state. But the tax bill you passed last year did just that. We also heard from Skybridge America. They're a 25-year-old company. They have 30 full-time employees, but they also employ 20 to 100 temporary employees in the state of Minnesota. Good job provider, providing good jobs for folks. They said they've already had one of their top 3 clients that has been with them for years requesting a RFP because of this tax. Clients of these businesses that have been with them for decades are saying, well, we're not so sure this is going to cost us. We don't necessarily want to stay with you. On top of this, we heard from all of these businesses talking about that they're looking to move out of the state. Distribution Alternatives already has a facility in California. They said it wouldn't be hard for us to move to California. We also heard from Impressions Incorporated. This is a printing company, and they have very expensive digital printing equipment. They're one of the few that have this. And they said that they were looking to expand, but now instead of expanding here in the state of Minnesota with good-paying jobs, they're looking to expand outside of the state. What we saw here in the 2013 tax bill was an outsourcing of jobs for the state of Minnesota. And though I am ecstatic that after we pleaded with you to have a special session in July, after we said let's address it in September at the special session there, that finally we are giving the tax relief that the Minnesotans deserve. But I'm afraid it may be too late for some of these folks. And we're going to have to do a lot more to get those jobs for middle-class citizens back in this state. Let's hope we don't do any more damage this year. And I ask for a green vote on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I, too, want you to vote green on this bill. But I just got to relay a story that happened in my district and one of my constituents. Just last month, one of my constituents who happens to be a large employer, a trucking warehousing outfit, emailed me to tell me that they lost $1 million contract due to the warehousing tax. Hasn't even been implemented yet, but they were afraid. The outfit that was warehousing their goods was afraid of that warehousing tax and moved that $1 million $1 million contract out of the state. The end of that email was, where do I move my business? Well, guess what, members? I just found out she found a place to move her business. It's to Hudson, Wisconsin. So now not only did we lose the $1 million warehousing business, now we lost that employer. So I congratulate you on coming to our senses, and I hope we pass this bill. But the damage is going to take a long time to recover. So members, vote green. I support the bill. I'm just afraid we've got a lot of damage to make up. Thank you, members.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do appreciate the good things in this bill. When I saw the number 1777, it reminded me of, back in that year, there were difficulties in the foraging war. They did little things, made little progress. And it was a victory that should be celebrated. And this, I see, is a victory. However, I think it's not as extensive and comprehensive in what the people deserve. But just as our General Washington back in 1777 took the little victories he could get, I will take the little victories we can get on this bill.
Representative Davids.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chair Lenczewski. Thank you for this bill. Thank you for getting this bill to the floor in warp speed. I'm scared that the Senate will be going at light speed or driving 55. Not sure which. But members, someone once said that it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Members, this is the best tax bill, and members, this is the worst tax bill. The worst part is I feel like I'm on the cleanup crew. We're cleaning up from 2013 when the DFL, with no Republicans on the conference committee, got rolled by the Senate, and I mean rolled. The House bill didn't have the warehouse tax, the sales tax on farm equipment repair, the telecom tax. It was the worst tax bill, $2.4 billion in new taxes and fees. But this is the best tax bill. This is the best tax bill. You look at all of the tax conformity for 2013. I'm a big tax conformity guy. I like tax conformity. And all of the tax conformity for 2013, we tried to make it a little better for 2013 with the increased standard deduction, the increased eligible expense limit for dependent care credit. Didn't get it. Didn't get it. I was asked by a reporter recently, well, if you don't get everything you want, are you going to vote for the bill? I said, I'm not going to take my toys and go home. I'm going to vote for the bill because it gets us in the right direction. And I see today the governor, we can't talk about the governor. The chief executive of the state came out with his proposal at $616 million. Now we're doing better. 503 to 616, maybe the Senate's at 725. I don't know that. But let's get this bill out of here today. There shouldn't be a red vote on the board. So Chair Lenczewski, 503, the governor at 616, and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble right before my BPOU caucus and endorsement convention because I thank Governor Dayton for his line in the sand of March 14th. Thank you, Governor Dayton. I'm going to hear about that. I know it. But that's okay. Members, Tuesday, February 25th is a day that will live in infamy. I never thought I would see such a thing as to sit there in my beloved tax committee that I'm so fortunate to serve on with Chair Lenczewski, and I saw Democrats running over each other to get to that testimony table to repeal taxes and to cut taxes and conform. And it went, holy cannoli, can you believe what's happening here? It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So we raise taxes and fees $2.4 billion. It's the worst tax bill. It's the best tax bill because we're given $503 million back. Governor, I like yours a little better. Because what do you do, Governor? We can't say Governor, can we? What does our chief executive propose? Eliminating the gift tax. I'm with you. Simplifying the estate tax, going from 1 million state to 2 instead of the 5 million point whatever. I like going from 1 to 2. I'd rather go 1 to 5. Because the estate tax, if you think about it for just a second, is an evil tax. It is an evil tax because you are paying taxes again on something you've already paid taxes for. If someone came down from Mars and landed here and said, you've already paid taxes on all this, now you get to pay it again, they turn around and go right back. at warp speed. I am so fortunate, members, to represent a district in southeastern Minnesota that borders Iowa and Wisconsin. That's good and that's bad. And the bad part is, when I have a farmer with a $700,000 combine needing a $50,000 repair, and we've got great implement dealers in Fillmore and Houston counties, great ones, but they are coming from Iowa and Wisconsin saying, if you need a big repair on your farm equipment, we're 7% less. Well, I got a lot of smart farmers too. And they figured that if they can save 7% on a $50,000 repair for labor, they'll do it. And they're doing it. So members, it is the best tax bill. It is the worst tax bill. But let's vote green and let's give it back.
Representative Zellers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Davids, I'm not going to thank the governor or the chief executive officer. I'm sure you're surprised at that. Members, what you're doing today, I echo Representative Dean's sentiments. To slap yourself on the back now saying, look at what we're doing, we're helping out, after you slapped a lot of these business owners either out of the state or into unproductive territory, is a little disingenuous. People have left the state because of the tax bill you passed. And if you think by undoing it now, yo-yoing back and forth is going to make them feel more comfortable, drive to Moorhead, drive to East Grand Forks, visit the Wahpeton and Breckenridge area. See how confident they are that this doesn't come back and haunt them yet another year. Yeah, sure, we got rid of a bunch of business-to-business taxes this year, but were those trial balloons? God help you what's coming next. Accounting, legal, sales tax on clothes, sales tax on anything we can find. And if you think you're going to appease some farmers by repealing the sales tax on repairs, you're kidding yourself. Sat with a farmer at Farm Fest having a pork chop in the Farm Bureau booth. He said, you look familiar. I said, yeah, I'm up in there in the cities. Yeah, you were that house guy. Hey, let me tell you what. I got to tell you. I said, oh, you're upset by the farm repair tax. I don't give a... Well, Representative Kahn, I won't say it. I don't give a darn about that. Let me tell you what I'm really upset about. I just spent the last 3 years, $6,000 in legal and accounting fees trying to turn over the family farm to my 3 sons. Governor just flushed that down the toilet. With the gift tax, with the inheritance tax. Those 2 things alone, he said, now set my farm and setting my farm to my 3 sons, who, thank God I got them talked into staying on the farm and actually continuing to work in agriculture, is now out the window. Congratulations. Sales and use tax, sure, that cost me some money, but it doesn't cost me one of my sons saying, you know what, it's just too hard, Dad. I'm not going to come back. I'm not going to stay on the farm. So if you think by now, after the fact, coming in saying, well, sorry, we made a mistake, but look at us, we're going to repeal. I think Representative Garofalo said it. Yeehaw, we're all tax cutters now. Everybody on the floor. You know, I suppose it's nice that it's during Mardi Gras. We can all party and we're all tax cutters now. But the business owners of this state, the business owners who aren't in our state, who are looking at Minnesota, aren't going to say, well, thank God, after they've had a bad idea, they corrected some of the bad idea after they did it, after people came out and said, this is horrible, I can't believe you're doing this. Well, thank goodness, we know they're going to be a very sound, stable investment that every year they pass a tax and next year they repeal a tax. Yeah, that's good business policy there. That's the kind of consistency I'm looking for my business. That one day I'm going to have to add sales tax on to the repairs, the next day I won't. Or there's maybe going to be a sales tax on what I store. Not the seed for the crops I'm going to grow, but the chemicals that I'm going to put on the seed. So I'll have to store my seed in this building and Wahpeton, I'll store my chemicals in another building over Breckenridge, or vice versa. This is not creating an environment. What we heard in tax committee, Representative Anderson gave you a lot of the stories that we heard from those business owners. The thing that I wrote down every single time afterwards is uncompetitive, uncompetitive, uncompetitive. You're making our state uncompetitive for growth, for expansion, for new development. You're not making it an environment where people come in and say, that's consistent tax policy. You raise taxes by $2 billion, so then you can come back the next year and say, look, we've created a $1 billion surplus. Yay, us. You raised taxes too much. You over-collected. Now you're trying to give it back. I won't go into the politics of what happens in an election year and tax cuts. That's just a little bit beyond the pale. But I'm with Representative Dean and Representative Lenczewski. I guess you got a tough job. I wouldn't have done it in the first place. But that's why I had the red-hot smoking tax bill from Chairman Davids. But to say that this isn't somehow something to be congratulated for after you created an environment where Minnesota business owners either look for other states for more productive territory and forget the promise of lowering property taxes all over the state, this is not a good day to brag about your work. Best thing you could do is say, we're sorry, we won't do it again. But that horse is out of the barn. Members, vote green. Don't do it again.
Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Over the last year of single-party control, Democrats have caused uncertainty for job creators and headaches for Minnesota families. Republicans have stood up and called for balance and compromise. Unfortunately, we've seen neither. I really want to thank my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle. During the 2013 session, prior to the tax bill being passed, we raised all of the concerns about why these policies were going to be so damaging to Minnesota businesses and to the people who were creating the jobs that Minnesota families so desperately want and need. We called for a special session in late summer, and during the special session last fall, said that let's not miss an opportunity to fix the mistakes that Democrats made during session. It wasn't long after we left here and Democrats themselves were saying, yeah, we shouldn't have done this. These policies were a mistake. Over and over again, we gave you the opportunity to make this right. But unfortunately, Democrats have fallen short. The reality is that this bill today is too little, and for many Minnesota businesses, it's coming too late. And your actions today don't go nearly far enough. We've heard numerous stories about how Minnesota businesses, based on a policy that hasn't even gone into effect yet, has caused them to make decisions to leave the state of Minnesota. And what does that mean? It means that Minnesota families don't have the opportunity for those jobs. These are real jobs, and they're affecting Minnesotans. Your decisions have had real consequences. In this bill, I spoke earlier about the fact that we've got $500 million in fixes to the mistakes that you made last year. But we've got a $1.2 billion surplus. You've collected and overtaxed from Minnesotans $1.2 billion, a little more than that. That's their money. Why isn't this a $1.2 billion tax relief bill? Why are we at $500 million? The real story here isn't about what's in the bill. The real story is what's not in the bill. And I'm afraid today we're learning that Democrats intend to spend another $700 million. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that your actions today of seeing how damaging these tax increases have been on Minnesota's economy and on driving job creators out of this state, I'm hoping today that because you've seen that this is a first step. Because doing anything other than that is saying to Minnesota families that you need this money more than they do. That you can spend this money better than they can. We had an opportunity with an amendment that would have allowed Minnesota families, 640 Minnesota families, to collect this deduction for 2013. They're filing their tax returns right now. We could have put that money in their pockets right now. They could have had it in their pockets within weeks. But you passed on the opportunity to do it for 2013 in order to do it for 2014. That scares me. Are you going to come back and take another bite at that apple? The reality is, Minnesota families won't see that tax credit until a year from now, when they file their 2014 return. Why on earth wouldn't we give them the opportunity to see that right now? When they're filing their report right now, we could have increased that an average of $112 for 640,000 Minnesota families right now. But we passed on that amendment that we offered, Republicans offered today, and said, no, we'll let them have that credit next year. So they'll get that money a year from now. You know what happens to that money in the meantime? We sit on it. Let's put that money in their pockets where it's needed. Unfortunately, we're not honoring the people that we came here to serve. We're making decisions that I think they're scratching their head at home at right now. And while, yes, we want them to have that tax credit for next year, we missed a great opportunity to give it to them right now when they're filing their 2013 return. Republican amendments offered today would have helped those impacted by Democrats' implementation of Obamacare here in Minnesota. Had Democrats lived up to their promises to Minnesotans, we could have added a refund for Minnesotans who face IRS penalties because they were unable to get insurance through MNsure. And we could have added a refund for 280,000 Minnesotans who were forced off their current health care plans onto more expensive plans. But Democrats said no. Sure, we understand that the implementation of MNsure has been disastrous, and I appreciate Democrats standing up here today to admit that that's the case. But it's not just the implementation, it's not just the website. Minnesota families are seeing their health insurance costs rise because of this policy. And it's going to get worse based on the numbers that we're seeing go into MNsure. Rates are going to increase if this legislature doesn't take some action and live up to the promises they made to Minnesotans. Today, Democrats in the Minnesota House have put the state government ahead of Minnesota families. And unfortunately, we've done Minnesota families a huge disservice. Whether it be your massive tax increases or the MNsure debacle that you're inflicting on Minnesotans, Democrats continue to make plans only to pull them back or change the rules at the last minute. Who's in charge? This doesn't show leadership. All along, Republicans have said these policies are going to hurt Minnesota families. And the feedback that we've gotten has been that Minnesota families don't like what Democrats are doing in Minnesota. Raise a huge amount of taxes just to cut a little bit. That's not leadership. You've caused so much uncertainty for Minnesota, and I'm not sure we'll ever be able to quantify the amount of jobs that have been lost or the number of opportunities that didn't come to Minnesota because Minnesota businesses expanded their operations in other states. Those are real jobs. You know, I can't help but think about the article I read a couple of weeks ago that said that the highest price on average for a one-bedroom apartment in America is not in New York City or in Los Angeles or in Chicago. If I remember right, I think the number was $1,500 for a one-bedroom apartment on average in New York City. You know where the highest price paid is? Bismarck, North Dakota. You know why? Because there's all kinds of jobs in Bismarck, North Dakota. I think the average price paid in Bismarck is $2,700 for a one-bedroom apartment. Do you think people in Bismarck, North Dakota are worried about minimum wage? Think they're worried about business-to-business taxes? No, because other states are saying we're open for business. But it's policies like these that have showed Minnesota businesses, Minnesota companies, that we don't want you to expand here, and it showed companies that might move here that we're closed for business. Go to North Dakota or go to some other state. And while Minnesota families have found jobs and they're back to work after the recession, we do have a low unemployment rate because we've got a great work ethic in Minnesota. 49% of Minnesotans are underemployed. 49%. Half of Minnesotans are underemployed. That means they're working at a job at a lower income or at a lower skill level than they're accustomed to. And what are Democrats doing to create more opportunities in Minnesota? Uncertainty. And while today is a step in the right direction, and I'll encourage my members to vote with you to take this first step, I'm going to ask you to join us in making sure that this is exactly that, a first step. Minnesotans have paid $1.2 billion too much into the state of Minnesota. Let's give them their money back. Your actions today aren't leadership, and your attacks on the hardworking taxpayers of Minnesota won't be forgotten. But I believe it can be a first step. And so I ask you today, let's not leave that $700 million sitting in our bank account, or worse yet, spend it on things that Minnesotans don't want or need. Let's give it back to them. That's where the money is needed, in the pockets and in the wallets and in the budgets of Minnesota families. That's where that money is needed. So while I'll encourage my members to vote in favor of this bill, let's join together as we move forward through this session to make sure that this bill is a first step, and only a first step, at returning Minnesotans' money back to their pockets. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, thank you for a decent discussion about Representative Lenczewski's tax bill. Thank you, Representative Lenczewski, as usual, for your smart and graceful work on behalf of Minnesotans. I also want to thank Representative Lyon for your improvement to the bill. Thank you for that. And mostly, as usual, I want to thank Minnesotans for the work that they're doing to make Minnesota the great state that it is. A year ago, we had a budget deficit. We owed our schools more than $800 million, and the economy was still in slow-mo. A year makes a significant difference. Our economy is growing. It's strong. We have created 50,000 jobs over the last year. Our budget's balanced, not just now, but into the foreseeable future. And we have a $1.2 billion deficit. But perhaps most importantly, Minnesotans are optimistic. And I hear that optimism when I talk with Minnesotans across the state. They are proud that Minnesota is outpacing the nation on so many measures, and that we're doing things the right way here in Minnesota. But like most of us, Minnesotans are overachievers. We're always striving to get better, to improve, and to be the best. And we certainly have more work to do to expand economic opportunity to more Minnesotans. And that's what we're doing today. And it's why what we did last year, the strong budget we passed, allows us to take the action that we're taking today together. I do think our friends across the aisle need a slight refresher on the budget that we passed last year. It did raise taxes, largely on the very wealthiest 2% of Minnesotans, and it closed corporate tax loopholes. We used that new revenue to balance and eliminate the deficit, to make historic investments in education like all-day kindergarten and early childhood education, and obviously to reduce property taxes for Minnesotans, especially homeowners, who found out this week they will pay $161 million less in property taxes in 2014. And on health care costs, let me just reference this Robert Wood Johnson report that I have. A year ago, before the ACA, someone in Minneapolis, a young person, would be paying $445 a month for their premium. Today, that range is $126 to $150 a month for a premium. That's a real reduction for Minnesotans. That's real money in their pocket That's change we can believe in. So contrary to the doom and gloom predictions, Minnesota has only grown stronger since we passed our budget last year, and now today we have an opportunity to take another step forward. Our middle-class tax cuts that we're passing today represent real money for real families across the state of Minnesota, and they're going to make a real difference. Nearly 1 million students, homeowners, a broad cross-section of Minnesotans, middle-class Minnesotans, are going to feel and experience real tax relief. They'll have real money in their pockets. And due to our growing economy, we can also eliminate some of the business-to-business taxes that were passed last session. We did hear Minnesotans and saw some small business owners talk about these tax proposals, and we listened carefully. And today, with the $1.2 billion surplus in place, we're able to be responsive to those concerns while maintaining our balanced budget. And you know, I think that's what Minnesotans really want. They want in their leaders not hardened positions, not lines in the sand, not reckless gridlock. They want a willingness to work together, to make decisions based on information and not on ideology. They want us to get things done, and that's what we're doing today. So members, I look forward to the bipartisan vote I expect that we'll get on this bill, so we can take our first big step this session to continue our progress to grow Minnesota's economy from the middle out. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Representative Lenczewski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. We've had a good discussion. I just, like others, and I want to thank Representative Murphy for her comments. I think she's covered it. This middle-class tax cut bill will provide tax relief to nearly 1 million Minnesotans and will make our tax system more simple, clear, and this relief is going to families, homeowners, students, and businesses. I just want to thank you again so much, Mr. Speaker, for your leadership on this, and Representative Murphy for your leadership on this. I think folks don't always understand what it takes to lead a caucus through this quick of an action to get tax relief this quickly. And members, time is of the essence. I want to again thank my caucus and thank the minority caucus, Representative Davids, Loon, and Representative Doubt, and all the members of the tax committee. Thank you for all your hard work on this. We look forward now that the Minnesota House will all pull together and try to talk to our colleagues in the other body and encourage them as they deliberate. I want to thank the governor as well. Members, I urge you to vote yes. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 126 ayes and 2 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration. Murphy E. for the Committee on Rules, pursuant to Rule 121 and 333, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Monday, March 10th, 2014. House File numbers 1455, 1986, and 655, and Senate File 894.
Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial resolutions at the desk and online. If there's no, we'll take those up first. If there's no objection, we'll adopt those motions. Seeing no objection, those motions are adopted.
Halverson moving that House File 1960, now in the General Register, be re-referred to the Committee on State Government Finance and Veterans Affairs.
Representative Halverson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is a bill that is dealing with the counties being able to purchase Help America Vote Act grants making those purchases through grants for voting equipment. There's a handful of counties that have yet to be able to finish making all their purchases as they're turning over to new equipment, as their old equipment is aging, and so this will just give them a couple more years to spend those funds. There is a small fiscal impact. It's going to end up being neutral, but it does need to be re-referred to the Committee on State Government Finance, so I ask for your support.
Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails.
Hortman moves that House File 2603 be recalled from the Committee on Commerce and Consumer Protection, Finance and Policy and re-referred to the Committee on Energy Policy.
Representative Hortman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That bill's about weatherization. If we hear it, we'll hear it in my committee and send it back to Chair Atkins.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails.
Pulowski moves that House File 2403 be returned to its author.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Pulowski
deals with specialty plates for the Ryder Cup that will be held in Minnesota in 2016. It is subpar. It needs to be returned to the practice range for a lot more work.
If there's no objection, so ordered.
Yep.
Any announcements? Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, actually, this is for all the female members here. Representative Hortman and I are hosting a safety awareness event for women. This summer we had in our community Angela Champagne Fromm. You may have read about her in the newspaper about 2 years ago. She was attacked in a parking ramp. And she and another woman by the name of Ann Yatch from Sealed Mindset are going to be here to talk about some safety procedures for women. And you'll be able to hear Angela's story and how it's changed her life and how she's on this road to educate more women about how to keep themselves safe. It will be Wednesday, March 12th, this coming Wednesday in room 5 at the State Office Building, and we're asking for $5 a person for pizza, and it will begin at 5:30. The pizza will be at 5:30, the event will be at 6, so I hope you can all come. There are these posters posted along near the elevators in the State Office Building, so hope you can make it.
Representative Beard.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Members, it's that time of year again where we start on the Legislative Audit Commission, we start putting together the program of work for the auditor and his team with the suggestions to the Evaluation Subcommittee. Representative Rick Hansen chairs the Evaluation Subcommittee. He's not on the floor at the moment. The deadline, however, is next Friday, so if you look in your mail for this handsome yellow sheet and turn that in either to Representative Hansen, myself, or any of the members, or you can fold it over and send it back to Auditor Jim Noble's office, that would be pretty good. Deadline is next Friday, members. Please pay attention. Thank you.
Representative Mariani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is just a reminder the House K-12 Policy Committee will not convene again this evening. We will, however, meet tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3 p.m., Monday, March 10th, 2014.
Representative Murphy moves when the House adjourn today, it adjourn until 3 p.m., Monday, March 10th, 2014. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails. Representative Murphy.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Murphy moves that the House do now adjourn. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails and the House stands adjourned until 3 p.m. Monday, March 10th, 2014.